To Change the Climate, the program for and about the Olympia chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, whose mission is to change the political climate for a livable world. I'm your host, Ed Ericsson. With me on this episode today, via Zoom, are the co-chairs of the Olympia chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, Regan Heineke and Alan Harcastle. I thought we'd start out by talking about where it began with Marshall Saunders. He's the one who came up with the fee and dividend, isn't he? Is that right?
He was one of the early proponents of putting a price on carbon, and that laid the basis for the fee and dividend as the policy that CCL adopted. This is about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so we've come a long way from having an initial idea to actually seeing legislation in the halls of Congress that'll put a price on carbon and the benefits that accrue to that policy.
Yeah. And you were there at the beginning of the Olympia chapter, right? Weren't you, Alan? Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the early members of the Olympia chapter. It was not hard generating interest in Olympia because it's a very progressive community. And there's been a lot of work done locally, regionally, and in Washington state to take a hard look at the impacts that global warming are going to have in our communities. And Olympia has been a city that has really invested a lot of time and effort in coming up with local grassroots solutions, but also advocating for national and state level solutions that would help reduce the impacts of global warming and climate change, and to begin to reduce our uses of fossil fuels so that we can lessen the impact through our everyday activities, which is really powerful. People often feel helpless, but there's a lot we can do through our own changes in behavior that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Regan, what do you think is the major contribution of Citizens Climate Lobby? Not only the lobbying, which we all realize, but as an organization.
Yeah, well, I cannot speak about this without giving a nod to the lobbying, because it truly is an organization that makes it easy to become a lobbyist. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware of another organization that does such a thing. So the super important part of it, but their contribution, I always was attracted to this group because of how focused they were on a solution that would probably get passed in Congress. So that laser focus that they always talk about, it can be very overwhelming to be a part of other groups where there's 5 million things you have to do to tackle this climate crisis. So it's pretty, it's a relief to just find an organization that has, it's not a silver bullet, but I've heard it in meetings be described as a silver shotgun, but at least something, a solution that we can rally around for now. It's certainly not all that has to happen. So much has to happen, but it's a fantastic starting point. It feels very empowering to have something to wrap your head around and talk about and ask your senators and your representatives to support rather than something vague.
Yeah. The what strikes me is that it is a place. I know that when I walked into it, you and I walked in about the same time, Regan, and when I walked into it, it was so satisfying just that the topic was climate change and that it was being approached from so many different angles. And I've learned so much more about it. And I know that there are people out there who would like to know more. And I don't think they can find a better place to do it than Citizens Climate Lobby meetings that happen once a month. Yeah.
I agree. I think one of the things that immediately attracted me to Citizens Climate Lobby? Well, a couple of things. One was their reliance on research and their belief in the science, which of course has served us well. It's a little scary, but it's served us well. Mm. And the second thing is its attitude about how we change behavior and how we go about lobbying people in Congress to put policies in place that will address the issue. And that is, we're super persistent and we're super respectful. I always like those qualities about Citizens Climate Lobby. When we develop a relationship with our member of Congress, it is with the idea that we're not showing up with our hand out. We're showing up to build a relationship, and we're going to be with that person for a long time. So we're building a relationship and trying to establish trust, and to come in with a good idea. And that person may not immediately think it's a good idea, or they may not support it. But through dialogue and conversation, I think we've made a big difference in our relationships and in our ability to influence our members of Congress.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that for me is that in this day and age of misinformation, of people trying to confuse things, and that Citizens Climate Lobby has been for a rock for me. And I know where I can go for the right information, and follow those ideas. And then of course there are the lobbying days, which of course we haven't been able to do really with just Zooming, but when I attended the one in Washington, it was just fantastic. All of the people who were there, all of the brilliance that was being shown, it was really great. Yeah. So I know that we have Marilyn Strickland, a meeting with her coming up. What do you think that we could do to push our agenda forward, particularly with our Congress people? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think we're at a reckoning point, personally. Just to point out the obvious, our previous representative was Denny Heck, and he was an older white gentleman, and we had a rapport with him. And now our representative is a person of color who was former mayor of Tacoma. And I think that we have to change our game here. She has a different set of values than Denny Heck, naturally. And we need to represent the type of people that she is attempting to represent. So I just find the whole thing, we're still building our relationship with her and trying to figure out who she wants to hear from and what she wants to hear. We've been historically, we are a Citizens Climate Lobby is an overwhelmingly white group. And we've talked about it, and we've tried to figure out ways to be more inclusive. But the truth is that the environmental movement is historically very white, and you have to have some free time to be able to think about such global, large issues. And so I think it's a reckoning point that we've known about, and it's happening to us here in Olympia right now.
Yeah, it is, and it is a time when we're getting close. It seems like Congress is addressing the issue more and more. That there are more people who are on the left and right who are realizing what an existential problem this is, and how we need to take action immediately. And the Citizens Climate Lobby has sort of adapted an attitude of let's talk about charging something for carbon, and that's it. Let's not talk about the dividend part, but we'll talk about the fee. And I don't know, what do you think about that approach, Alan?
Well, I think it's a credit to CCL that its persistence and its willingness to adapt its own policy position based on political realities has been really, really important. 10 years ago, this idea of carbon fee and dividend was just a policy notion. And it took a long time for even the concept of it to be accepted. And now here we are today, where some form of pricing carbon is very likely to be in the upcoming reconciliation bill that is imminent in the halls of Congress. And currently, just in the last year, we have 4 different versions in 4 different bills of putting a price on carbon being offered by members of Congress. And as you just mentioned, Ed, we're seeing much more support now for on both sides of the aisle than we've ever seen. There is a group of Republicans who are caucusing in support of some kind of fee on carbon, because members of Congress in every state are beginning to feel the effects of changes in weather patterns and in predictability and climate and heat and weather events that we've never felt or seen before. And I think Republicans are recognizing that to serve their own constituents, they have got to stand up and come up with ideas that will help solve the problem. Fortunately, carbon fee and dividend is popular with the majority of Americans. I think the last survey was that 75% of Americans believe that some kind of carbon fee or tax is a good idea. And if it's true that our members of Congress are there to represent us, then that is a very powerful motivator. And that's something else that CCL has been very effective in doing, is mobilizing membership, chapters, and getting lots of attention called to this potential solution for how we address climate change.
I just wanted to add to that, it's always an important reminder for me personally that although on paper, the sponsors for the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act are overwhelmingly Democrat, the truth is that a bipartisan or nonpartisan, however you want to look at it, caucus came up with that bill. And so, despite the fact that Republicans haven't officially signed their name to such bill when it was, entered into the House, it was truly, a dual effort to come up with the idea in the first place, and the language of the bill in the first place.
Yeah. I think that the basic question that keeps on coming up, and it came up at the beginning and it's coming up again, is why won't the companies just pass on what they're being charged? Why should it hurt them? And they'll just pass it on to the consumer, which is a good question. How we know that if you eventually the profit motive will probably take over, and they will come around to realizing that they need to curb their carbon. But that question is still being battered around. I heard it just the other day. So yeah.
I think it's very unlikely that without some kind of uniform policy and requirement that companies are willing or even able to do this on their own. And many corporations would rather have a predictable price on carbon, even if it goes up, than they would have maybe just waiting to see how the market unfolds. Mm-hmm. So there's predictability that's associated with a fee on carbon. Even if you don't like the fee, at least you know it's coming. Mm-hmm. And it is probably inevitable that prices on some items will increase, and those costs will be borne by consumers on some products. Anything that uses oil, and there's a lot, are going to rise in price. But the dividend that comes back to all Americans in the form of cash payments every month is designed to be sure that those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum are not unduly burdened, and that the research shows that people at the lower end of the economic spectrum, will actually do better than those at the upper end. So there's a certain equity that's built into the policy that is very appealing from a social justice standpoint.
Mhm.
And I think in our work with Representative Strickland, that's where we really want to have that personal interface with her and her staff to point out that this is a beneficial policy for the constituents that they have concerns about. The other thing was, I just want to mention, and Regan pointed out, that we had a different audience in Denny Heck. But it took 3 to 4 years before Denny finally agreed to be a co-sponsor.
Mhm.
So even under the best of circumstances, this takes time.
Mhm.
And we would love it if Marilyn Strickland were to stand up and say, yes, I will co-sponsor that.
Mhm.
That is our goal, and that's the direction we're heading.
Yeah,
And
and
at
Denny,
this
and
point-
he shared the same concern. He was worried about his lower income constituents. He did not want to unduly burden them.
Yep.
Mhm.
You know, at this point in time, it feels even more critical that we have our member of Congress buying into this policy, because we're so close to having a solution that's practical and effective.
Mhm.
But it takes time to change attitudes, and our members of Congress have many pressures that they have to deal with. But we don't give up. That's one of our qualities, is that we will keep at this, and we will provide whatever evidence we can to show how this is beneficial to her constituents and beneficial for our state.
Yeah, these chaotic political times, we are the constituents of Maryland Strickland. But if you look at West Virginia or another state like that, they are concerned about the constituents. That they're concerned about being reelected, as politicians are, and it is the proof that. And, well, one of the things nice about Citizens Climate Lobby is it's in everywhere. It is there in every town has a chapter practically, and or if not, they can actually join on their own. A individual could join, but that the politicians have to look at the evidence and see how much the evidence is mounting, and of course. With things like the oil spill that happened in California, when things like that happen, it should at least shake people to think that's because of oil. Basically, it's like saying, what causes car accidents? Well, cars.
Yep.
So, what do you think will be? Let's look ahead. And try to figure out what will happen in the next couple of years. We know that I think that when Regan and I joined, we were excited. We figured that the UN had a plan and everything was going to, it was going to go that way. But of course, then after Obama, then there was Trump, and so it shifts everything. Everything is constantly shifting in America, it seems. And there are counter forces that continue to rage on. What do you think? What will happen? What will happen in the next few years?
Well, we know what's going to happen. It's getting hotter. The wildfires are outrageous. The extreme weather events are outrageous. None of that's stopping. Here in Washington, we set a record for our coldest October day a couple days ago. And then we set records in June for the hottest days ever here in Washington state. That's not changing. So, we love to pretend that things aren't as bad as they are, but I think collectively we all know it's bad. And, I've had to do a lot less arguing with my more conservative friends and family about what's going on around here and that it's very serious and that something needs to be done about it. So we know that that's happening. And as a constituent, I just want my representative to act, period, on climate change. Just do whatever comes up. Now I feel very strongly, I've been sold on the idea of putting a price on carbon. I feel that that is extremely effective, and I've not yet seen anything that would be more effective. But at this point, I know that generally my community, we all know it's getting serious, and we all generally want our representatives to do something serious quickly now.
Sad to say that these weather events that have increased in intensity and in the impact they've had on ordinary citizens, maybe that was necessary to get people to pay attention. On June 28th in Olympia, it was 110 degrees, the hottest on record. And as Regan just mentioned, we've already had record cold spells for October. Incredible, the variation in impact. And if you've had a chance to look at the new international panel on climate change, you very quickly see that the impacts that we were predicting just a few years ago have been upgraded and are likely to be even more severe, more quickly than we ever thought possible. That's in part because we have better ways of measuring and forecasting actual impacts of global climate change. But the time is now. That's the message. The time is now. And we have a bill in Congress. We have a very high likelihood that putting a price on carbon will be part of imminent legislation that will be coming through the halls of Congress. And we have made more progress in the last few years in getting people's attention than we have in quite a while. So, it's easy to look at every day as a dark day with not much hope, but there's actually some really incredible things happening in our state and in Congress that can really make a difference. Think about all the accomplishments just in Washington state over this past year. We've enacted, our own version of a carbon policy in cap and invest. We have adopted a low carbon fuel standard, which is going to really promote the use of electrification and electric transportation. We have some pretty remarkable things that we've accomplished here. And people will say, well, you're just Washington. Why should we care? You're just a small piece here. Well, I think national leadership is really, really important, and we're a part of that. A new administration in the White House who essentially has said, we need to reduce emissions 100, so we get to net zero by 2050. Well, guess what? A carbon tax is exactly the solution that can contribute to that goal. So we feel that there's an idea that's available now and can be very effective in helping us to meet the challenge. It's not the only thing we have to do, but it's very much an important part of what we have to do to address climate change.
There's a lot of options out there that you can't concretely say what the outcome of such a policy would be. It's harder to quantify. And it gets messy quickly, but carbon pricing kind of floats to the top as, of course, still messy and still complicated, but the least messy, the least complicated, the most fair of all the options. And I agree, I'll take any action whatsoever, but carbon pricing sure seems to be as clean as it can get, as equitable as it can get, which is not to say that it's completely equitable. It is not, but it's as good as things can get as far as policy goes.
One of the things that's nice about the Citizens Climate Lobby, I find, is that from the top down, Mark Reynolds, from everyone all the way, it is optimism. It is always a look up. We've got some plans, and we've got to always figure that they're going to work. We're going to keep on pushing them until they do, or something like them do anyhow. And
Yes.
and there are such remarkable people who are in the meetings, from Jim Lazar, who was on last month, who talked about the future and how clean it will be, and how much it will be. It'll be a wonderful future if we can actually, be there and do it.
Yes.
So yeah,
It's just really good communications. A lot of organizations struggle with communications, but Citizens Climate Lobby notes all those wins. They note all those letters to the editor. Every small win, they're tracking it and they're sharing it with everybody.
Yeah.
I think also Citizens Climate Lobby has been brilliant in its ability to help people come together and in a more hopeful environment for change. You're equipping people to make a difference by using the tools and information and all the training that goes with it. So when I'm in community with each of you, I feel good because I feel like I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to help my kids and my family and my friends have a better future if I can be active and if I can contribute to that solution.
Yeah.
So it's about leaving a legacy of working hard to make a difference.
Yeah, I can say because of Citizens Climate Lobby, I have met both of my senators and my last representative and my current representative personally. These are things that I was empowered to do just by being a part of this organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank both of you. You have both contributed greatly to Citizens Climate Lobby Olympia, and thank you for being on Change the Climate. It's been so good to know both of you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you,
Thank
Ed,
you.
and thank you for all of your hard work and designing, planning, and really directing Change the Climate for CCL. It's a great body of work that I know a lot of people have reviewed, and you've just been a masterful job and been a great colleague for us, and we will miss you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ed, this is definitely something as outside my comfort zone. You've had me on here twice now. So.
But you're really masterful and making it feel like just it's a conversation on the couch.
Well, that it's the old jackets that are always the most comfortable. Would you like to know more about Citizens Climate Lobby or join the Olympia group? Go to citizensclimatelobby.org/chapters. Thank you for watching Change the Climate.